Are we streaming? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I'll call the special meeting of council to order for this June 23rd, 2023. 2025, I'll get it right yet. And we'll just get right down to business, but I will ask if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, and we do have quorum. And so we will go right into the agenda here. And I apologize, I have the wrong one up, this regular meeting. So I will turn it right over to our clerk to begin our meeting to talk about the review of the draft procedure bylaw.
Thank you. So tonight's special meeting, as Mayor Petrie said, is dedicated to reviewing the draft of the procedure bylaw. My intention tonight is to go through a quick PowerPoint presentation. We'll talk a little bit about the background, the engagement phase of the review, and then get into the specific sections that we updated and that you'll see reflected in the procedure bylaw in front of you. Really, this is intended to be kind of an educational, informal meeting where we can have discussion about the different sections of the bylaw. I can answer questions. We can talk about what needs to change, any edits made. If they're large edits to something fairly significant, we are asking for that to be in a motion, just so we have the consensus of council to make that change. Anything that is smaller in nature, happy to just note it and we'll make those changes. And then the intention is to, based on the level of amendments that need to be made, bring it back at a subsequent meeting, hopefully the next regular council meeting, for a final review, and then to give notice under the procedure bylaw that we are intending to have council adopt a new procedure bylaw. So without further ado, we'll just get into the background. So
if I could just, as you go through this, we're talking about different sections, would you like questions each part of the section, or would you like us to wait to the end?
Let's do section, because there are quite a few sections if council is agreeable to that.
So since this is a little bit less formal this evening, if someone, and there's only a small group of us, if you have a question, just go ahead and we'll see how that works.
Perfect. So this section is just a quick background. So obviously, per the Municipal Act, all municipalities in Ontario are required to have a procedure bylaw, and it governs the way that council and boards and committee meetings run. So the last time this bylaw was updated thoroughly was in 2018, so we are definitely well overdue for a good update to the procedure bylaw, and want to thank everybody for their input throughout this process. So we'll quickly discuss the process. The first phase commenced in February. Oh, I did not move that forward, sorry. February to March was phase 1, which was council and staff and the public consultation and engagement. Phase 2, March to April, we reviewed all of that feedback, started reviewing, we've been reviewing our own procedure bylaw for quite some time now, but looking at it in more detail, and then other municipal procedure bylaws. Phase 3 was additional council consultation. So as council can recall, once we completed the engagement section, we did have a number of items that we wanted to bring to council's attention and get consensus on, such as the second meeting, which you'll see reflected in the procedure bylaw. Phase 4 is today. So council is draft bylaw assessment is part of the April-June. Phase 4 is next, which is revised procedure bylaw to council and notice of intention to pass, as I spoke about a moment ago. And then phase 5, if everything goes according to plan, the final procedure bylaw will be adopted at the August regular meeting of council. So some notable amendments before we get into the meat of the procedure bylaw. So as council will recall, when we were requesting feedback from members of council, from boards and committees, and the public and staff, we wanted to group it into different categories. So one of them was general housekeeping, so anything that would fall under kind of grammar, edits, numbering, formatting. So some of the things that we did, we cleaned up duplicate statements, corrected formatting and numbering issues, spelling and grammar correction, consistency in syntax, and incorporation of past amendments into the current bylaw. They weren't necessarily reflected in a consolidated bylaw. They were adopted, but just were in different locations. And then we removed redundant or rarely used items. The next was meeting efficiency. So as part of the procedure bylaw update, we focused on improving meeting efficiency, which for staff refers to the effective use of time and resources during council meetings to support informed decision-making while minimizing delays or redundancies. So in reviewing meeting efficiency, we examined the order of business, which you'll see there's quite a few amendments we've made to that section. And areas where council may be spending time on unnecessary procedural steps, often to navigate scheduling constraints or repetitive processes. The proposed changes aim to streamline procedures, reduce duplication, and help meetings run more smoothly without limiting meaningful discussion. So some of the changes that we made that we can get into further discussion on, obviously I just said we've amended the order of business, and you'll see some of those significant changes listed below. We are proposing to adopt a new procedure, or new bylaw adoption procedure. We've also removed committee of the whole, and we've reflected the addition of a second monthly meeting in there.
Could you just online, if she can do that?
Okay.
Okay, sorry. No, she's online.
Oh, I think she's just looking for IT.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to let everybody know.
Sorry, do we just want to pause there for a second then?
I just wanted to let somebody know so that we.
She probably can still hear, but she will be hard for us to communicate to her or with her and or be seen by the public, I would guess.
Okay, so at this time, if you'd like to please continue.
Sure. Okay, so the next section that we looked at with respect to updating the procedure bylaw was meeting transparency. So transparency refers to how clearly and openly council business is conducted so that members of the public, staff, and council understand what to expect and how to engage. So this includes how information is shared, how decisions are made, and how the public can participate in council meetings. The updated bylaw strengthens transparency by establishing clearer procedures, improving structure of the agenda, and reinforcing predictable and accessible practices from the outset of each meeting. So some of the things that we looked at, we've incorporated the addition of a guiding principles section at the beginning of the bylaw, clarification throughout the document pertaining to the applicability of committees, the addition of electronic devices section, expanded rules for disclosures of pecuniary interest. So they don't deviate from what's required under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, but we tried to make it clear what the expectations are so that everybody's aware. A lot of more clarification regarding correspondence items and petitions, and expanded rules and clarified processes for delegations and members of the public. So council will see quite a lot of changes to that section. And the next item we looked at was meeting accessibility. So we wanted to ensure that there was a more equitable, experience for all council and committee members. So accessibility in the context of the procedure bylaw refers not only to physical or technological access to meetings, but also how usable and understandable the procedure bylaw is for members. So updates include clearer, more inclusive language, more user-friendly structure to support all members in participating effectively, regardless of experience and familiarity with parliamentary procedures. And then we tried to incorporate just hyperlinks throughout, and then kind of like a Robert's Rules cheat sheet at the end of the document to help identify the requirements for certain motions that you see come up routinely in council meetings. And then other notable amendments, the timing was perfect for us to incorporate strong mayor, reference to strong mayor legislation throughout the document. So you'll see where we have made reference to that with respect to vetoes, bylaws, not having to adhere to notice of motion requirements for the mayor. So you'll see reference to that part of the Municipal Act reference throughout. So this is where we get into kind of more of the discussion, and so please feel free to let me know of any questions that you have. With respect to guiding principles, we wanted to kind of set the foundation of the procedure bylaw, so emphasizing openness, transparency, and accountability in council decision-making. So this section really reinforces clear, respectful, and fair processes by ensuring decisions are made without confusion or bias, balancing the rights of the majority to decide when the minority's rights and the minority's rights to be heard, and supporting public access to information and input. So obviously, I say all of this with respect to guiding principles. The new section in the Municipal Act with respect to strong mayor powers kind of erodes that slightly. But the intent is there to really ensure that there's fairness and so that, you know, votes are heard and votes are respected. And I can get into definitions, or if anyone has any questions about the guiding principles section, it's fairly straightforward, but happy to answer questions.
I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Halleru, if we're able to get you online, we'll gladly go back to reference any questions you have until that happens. But yeah, so we'll continue if there's no questions.
Definitions, we have kept a lot of the definitions that were already in the procedure bylaw. And sorry, I should backtrack for a second and say, when you're looking at the document, you'll see there's a lot of yellow text in there. Those are new or significantly amended sections of the procedure bylaw. So just wanted to draw council's attention to those. We also throughout made a lot of small changes to grammar, wording, applying plain language. So those aren't highlighted because it would just be throughout the document and maybe make it too difficult to move through and to understand. So it's the yellow sections that are the newer or significantly amended sections. So with respect to definitions, we just wanted to have clear explanations of key terms used throughout the document and ensure consistency and clarity for all users and a common understanding of key terms that are used throughout the document is the intention of the definition section.
I have some different definitions, but I'm going to send those to the clerks for review. We had a meeting today, and they were able to answer a lot of my questions, so we'll fine with what comes back from that to be able to talk about that later. But does anybody have any questions on definitions? None? Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the general provisions section of the procedure bylaw. So this section outlines the overarching rules that govern how the procedure bylaw is applied. Its purpose is to clarify the scope of the bylaw, how procedural questions are handled, and under what circumstances the rules may be suspended or amended. Overall, this section sets the framework for the consistent and lawful application of the procedure bylaw. Perfect. Next is the meeting section. So this section of the bylaw establishes the rules and guidelines for when, where, and how council and committee meetings are held. It sets the default location for council meetings, outlines provisions for committee meetings, including electronic participation, and ensures that all meetings remain open to the public except where closed, as authorized by Section 239 of the Municipal Act. So it also talks about the inaugural meeting, when that will occur, regular meetings, special meetings. and lays the foundation for those. Overall, it provides a clear framework. Its intention, is to provide a clear framework to ensure meetings are accessible, well-organized, and responsive to the needs of council and the community at large.
There is that new section in there that's going to come into 2026 budget. Is there anything, that's what we've asked for, but if there's anything you wanted to highlight on that or questions on that section? See any questions?
For me,
Brian, I can't really hear you, Brian.
Oh, welcome, Councillor Halleru. I will try to make sure that I speak up on the microphone.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Thanks.
questions up to this point, Councillor Halleru?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll continue then, and, sorry, I didn't know if there was anything else the clerk would like to add to that.
No, so council just at the June regular meeting adopted the policy for the discretionary second meeting. So that is attached as an appendix to the procedure bylaw. And so that will be what staff reference to help guide the decision on whether or not that council meeting is scheduled. So I think it should probably be fairly top of mind for council because you just discussed that a couple weeks ago. Okay, we can get into calling the meeting to order, which is the next section. So section 5 concerns calling the meeting to order. It outlines the procedures for officially starting a council or committee meeting. It ensures that the meeting begins promptly once quorum is present, maintaining order and respect for everyone's time. It also sets clear guidelines for handling absences, including notifying the clerk or chair and providing a process for appointing an acting chair if the mayor or chair is unavailable to preside over the meeting. Overall, this section is important because it establishes a consistent and orderly way to commence meetings, ensure that meetings only proceed when sufficient members are present to make decisions, and that there is clear direction on who will preside over meetings in the absence of a chair.
So I have something that I'd like to bring forward on this one, and it's just a question to council. One of the things that I noticed in that is that 5.4 and 5.2 have different times. So one's 10 minutes if there's no quorum, and one is 15 minutes if the mayor or chair does not attend. And I wanted to get councils. I'd like to, just for clarity, just make them same thing as 10 minutes each. I didn't know how council would feel about that. That was just one thing, just for consistency of trying to remember time zones or timelines.
Is there a reason why it was 15 and 10? Just the clerk's department, if they know, or is it just?
I think most of it is, well, we obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, we discussed the 10 minutes a couple meetings ago when we went through the decision points for council. And I think the 15 minutes, I'm not entirely sure where it came from, but I don't see any issue with aligning those two.
If I do remember in the meeting, we agreed to, I'm not sure if it was this meeting or our last meeting, to agree to the 10 minutes. Isn't that what we agreed?
I believe that was for delegations.
Oh, okay.
So if I read this correctly, if you're, or the chair, if you or the chair, whether it be the mayor or the chair, doesn't arrive within 15 minutes, then that gives them an extra 5 minutes. We may have quorum already, but it would give them an extra 5 minutes to.
Christy, you're not, I can't hear you at all.
Nope, my apologies, I didn't have my mic on. I'm reading it that if the chair or the mayor is not here within 15 minutes of a meeting, then they would have the opportunity, staff would have the opportunity to prep somebody for 5 minutes, because we could still have quorum without a mayor or chair being here. So to me, that extra 5 minutes gives staff a chance to say, okay, here's all the paperwork until the mayor or the chair gets here, because you need to make a decision of whether or not you're going to move forward, right? So I kind of see having that 15 minutes versus 10 minutes not a bad thing in that respect. Maybe I'm reading it differently than everyone else.
If that's what it means, it sounds like a great way to interpret it, you know.
I'm not 100% following you, because I get whether you could have quorum, but you might not have quorum. to me, they're two separate things. One, you're waiting for quorum, whether the mayor or the chair is there, or you're not waiting, like you have quorum and you're waiting for the mayor or chair to show.
I think they're
It's
two
not a big,
separate things.
we can go either way. It doesn't, it's just for consistency, it's just more of a,
Question, aren't they two separate things? One for quorum and one for chair?
yes.
They are definitely two separate things.
Yeah, so for me, I think understanding what Christie is saying is, if the mayor is not there and we are 10 minutes, then we have 5 minutes to say, the deputy mayor steps in and there's a chance that she gets prepped for it. And in another situation is if you're coming in and there's no quorum because you're not there, then that's 10 minutes, then we called it off. I think that's what the separation is. That's how I'm seeing that's how I'm understanding it.
But what about the situation where there is quorum? You're gonna wait extra long.
Extra 5 minutes to prep the next person. That's what I understand from what I'm reading.
Okay, well, we can move on from that one.
I get
where you're
coming from too. I just think that.
Mike.
Right. I just think that we're giving staff an opportunity to prep, and it may not be you, it could be the next mayor. I mean, I'm just saying, whomever it is, it gives them an opportunity to prep them for that 5 minutes. And I could be reading it completely wrong, and if I am, then I have no issue in backing off and saying, yep, let's go 10 minutes all the way around, so. But I just think that it gives staff an extra 5 to prep.
Are there any questions on the calling meeting to order? Okay. That kind of like, there's section 5.5 relates to 6.1.8 and 8.2.1. All kind of go if the mayor is unable to perform their duties or if the chair vacate or it talks about the committee and the council may choose a member to act as the chair for the rest of the meeting. So I just want to make sure all those 3 sections are consistent across the board. But I've included that in my notes to the clerk as well to be considered. So please continue.
Thank you. So next we will get into conduct at meetings. So this section outlines the expected standards of behavior for council members, committee members, delegates, and attendees at meetings. So its purpose is to ensure meetings remain respectful, orderly, and focused on productive discussion and decision-making. For members, it reinforces the need to follow the council code of conduct, seek recognition from the chair before speaking, and follow the rules of debate as outlined within the procedure bylaw. It also prohibits behavior that could be disrupt proceedings, such as speaking out of turn, using offensive language, or disobeying the chair. For the public and delegations, this section ensures participation is appropriate and respectful by setting clear expectations for decorum, including restrictions on disruptive behavior and discriminatory and or defamatory comments. So together, these provisions are really intended to provide a safe, inclusive, and professional meeting environment for all participants. So I think, unfortunately, we've seen in some instances in other municipalities where things have gone a little sideways. Really, the intention is to set clear expectations at the outset that we can then communicate when we're communicating with delegates and for council to know. So happy to answer questions on this section.
Any questions on that section? Again, I've brought these up, but I'll just bring them up for councils. There's, when it comes to making the point of order, 6.1.7, it's mentioned also in 8.1.3 and 12.6.3 to 12.6.7. So just want to make sure that's consistent flow across there so it's all clear. But that's the only thing I had under that section.
And I will say before we move on, the chair has a lot of responsibility for ensuring that decorum is maintained, but it's also understanding points of order and when they can be raised if any member feels that there is anything that is out of line with respect to the proceedings of the council meeting. So it's really empowering you to know what is prohibited under the procedure bylaw. Okay, so we'll move on to rules of debate. So the rules of debate section sets out how members may speak, ask questions, and bring forward motions during meetings. The purpose of this section is to ensure or to promote fair, respectful, and orderly debate where all members have an equal opportunity to participate while keeping discussions focused and efficient. It outlines time limits for speaking, how and when questions can be asked, and the process for requesting recorded votes or raising points of order. It also clarifies which motions can be introduced without notice and how members may challenge or appeal rulings made by the chair. Again, ensuring that there's an equitable experience at the council horseshoe. By establishing clear rules, this section helps maintain structure, avoid disruptions, and ensure that decisions are made through open and balanced process.
Questions on that? One request I would have is to relocate 7.1, point 2, and point 3 to the voting section as they're dealing with that subject through the recorded vote process. And then I had a question because I missed this one in our meeting. Is the same thing with 7.1 and 7.2, would they be better suited in the motion sections, or are they more, just because they talk to motions, but is it more a debate motions, I guess?
Sorry, do you mind repeating which?
7.1, 7.11 and
Okay.
7.12.
It's tough because they're applicable to both, and really, as I said, this section is really intended to, with respect to rules of debate, understanding when council can move something that doesn't require the chair acknowledging. So it's kind of applicable. We could look at that section and maybe do a hyperlink so that it's clearer. But I think with respect to debate, if council is, in a conversation or debating a motion or considering an item on the agenda, and there is something that needs to be brought to the attention of the chair right away, that falls under rules of debate. It's tricky. A lot of these sections, you could house them in multiple locations, so it's trying to find the right spot. But I'm happy to hear council's opinion on it and where you think you'd like to see it, or I could try to work with it and do some hyperlinks so that it's kind of reflected in a couple locations.
I think that's my biggest thing is, as we would get in debate and you're in the moment, the easiness to find those things that you need to be able to do them, and for the chair as well to find them when those questions are called and stuff like that. So it can be tricky to, I don't think it's ever the perfect scenario, right? No. But, okay, well, that's.
Mayor, where were you suggesting that they go to?
Well, they would, it's, to me, I see them as motion, like in the motion section.
Motions and voting section, okay, thank you.
But yeah, it's one where they could apply more to the debate part, as the clerk explained, right? So. Nope, I don't see anything else.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Did you have one more?
No,
Okay.
Sorry, are we staying on this section or are you moving on to the next one?
You can, no, if you have something, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
So there was 7.5, which is new, around limited to a maximum of 4 minutes cumulative total, which I think we kind of had before, but this is a little bit more specific.
Yes, I was actually going
Okay,
to.
sorry,
I had a
that's why I
thought.
was
No, I'm
asking,
glad you said it
okay.
because I was going to bring it up and then it completely left my brain. So the provision in the 2018 procedure bylaw states that council can only speak once. That was never being followed. So we looked at it and thought, okay, let's put in twice or, a cumulative 8 minutes in total. And we wanted to propose that to council. Again, you can do away with this section altogether, but sometimes I think it's nice to have, for the chair to have something to lean on, especially if conversation is, getting a little out of hand, or there's a lot of thoughts coming up on a certain item. So it helps council to know to kind of focus the contributions and their thoughts on specific items. So That is new. Thank you for pointing that out. But again, it's a recommendation we put in here, completely agreeable to amending it as council sees fit.
And from my interpretation, unless there's like a point of order or anything like that, is I'm always going to try to be lenient on these if there's good debate going on and there's valuable debate going on. It's just if we get into circles, you know, it's one of those things where it's always council's decision, you know, whether they want to, but it's always a hard one because if we're having a good debate and good information's coming forward, don't really like to stop that.
I can't hear you.
So I was just saying that, because with 7.5, that, you know, unless there's a point of order, and if there's good debate coming on, I would rather not enforce that one, unless we get into just a circle of repeating things, but it's always good to have something like that in there.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
I think it's a good addition, and I would like to see it be more consistent, because it forces us to be prepared and have those discussions ahead of time outside of council and be productive with the time we are using in council. So I think it's a great addition. I just think it's hard for the chair to even know, are they at 2 minutes and 38 seconds? Like, we just don't have the tools to be able to reasonably monitor that consistently. So if there's no tools to do it consistently, it just feels like it's in there,
fairness,
kind of.
You guys have been doing a good job at knowing when and where there is a need for that cycle of debate and dialogue. And I think it just speaks to the fact that there are some cases where we do need to add more, you know, information or more perspectives as we go around. And I would say you guys, Brian and Lindsay, the 2 times, I mean, I see that it's already a habit that you're able to coordinate that. So I think just having it in there just validates the fact that we're already doing that.
I think
I don't think,
that's fair, except that it will not always be whoever's at this table. Like, we are making these rules for whoever sits in these chairs now or whenever they decide to change it
Yeah.
again. So someone may choose to enforce that to the minute. And so if it's
Yeah.
in here,
Yeah.
expect that it will be enforced, except that we don't necessarily have the technology to enforce it. I've seen the school board has like clocks and it runs and you always know how much time you have left. Like, we just don't have that. So I don't see how it's a tool we could really lean on without a lot of gray area.
is it easier if we said something like maybe 2 or 3 rounds maximum, and that way it's for some of us that don't have the technology?
My
Because-
interpretation of that is that would be the intent to try to adhere to for members. Okay, that's in there, let's try to, and then if we get into, I don't recall too many times where that kind of debate length would have been exceeded. So I think we'll be okay with that, but if it becomes a problem, then we can explore those technology options to try to formally get there, but I think for the most part, some of our longest conversations have been our best ones, and we've been able to, I would say that it takes a lot to get to 4 minutes on a speech, and then to 8 minutes is quite a bit, and usually the councils that leave anyway, and we could always, if we get too long, we can always say that the council can say, okay, like, do we want to continue or do we not want to? But it's a good update.
I think it's a great update. If anything, it might be 4 times that you get up to 8 minutes in that respect. I do think that 4 minutes is a long time to speak in that respect. But I agree with Deputy Mayor. I think great addition, and if we can ever figure out the technology of being able to time it, it would make us all a little bit more prepared when we come to make sure that we know exactly what we're going to say. However, when you're in debate, sometimes you don't think of those things until you're into debate. So this is much better than what it was, than what we had in our previous bylaw. So I'm good with it. I mean, we may find that we need to amend it after we've gotten going. So I think it's going to be something that, you know, again, this is a document that isn't going to sit on a shelf. I think it's something that we'll use on a constant basis, and if there's something that needs to be amended within it, then we're going to find that amendment in that respect. So I agree with everybody.
I like it.
Any other questions or comments on rules of debate? Go ahead.
So,
We'll just pause for a second here. Counselor Hallery, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we just lost the TV screen, so,
Oh, okay.
oh, we're just gonna fire back up the main laptop, I think, here. It's too hot for them.
Mm-hmm. Hot day.
Maybe it did die from the heat.
I've been using my extra document anyways, even if it doesn't work, we can continue.
I think we're just trying for the streaming part of it as well.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Allow staff to see what we can do with this, and then we will continue.
Okay.
According to this, I don't. All right. We'll stream back on? Okay.
Yep.
We are back and ready to go, so please continue.
Okay, so we're in rules of debate, I think.
I think we're good on rules of debate.
Okay, we will move on. The next section concerns duties of the chair. So duties of the chair section outlines the responsibilities of the mayor or chair when presiding over a meeting. Its purpose is to ensure meetings are conducted in an orderly, fair, and lawful manner. This section defines how the chair opens and adjourns meetings, manages the agenda, facilitates debate, enforces the rules of procedure, and ensures decorum. It also confirms the chair's role in calling votes, ruling on points of order, and maintaining the flow of business as reflected on the agenda. The section also sets out the role of deputy or acting mayor when the mayor is unavailable, ensuring continuity and leadership in meeting management. And together, these provisions help safeguard the integrity and efficiency of council and committee meetings.
Questions or comments on duties of the chair? One I had just asked for clarification on, because 8.1.4 and 8.1.5 state that the mayor has the right to vote. When the mayor sees fit to exercise the right to vote, they may briefly explain their vote, but 12.5.8 says that the mayor shall vote on all motions and proceedings in the meeting. So I just asked for some clarification on those two, but that's all I have.
We can do that.
Please continue.
Okay, so the next section concerns public notice. This section outlines how meeting information, is shared with council and the public, ensuring transparency, consistency, and legal compliance. This section helps establish clear expectations so the public knows when and where to access meeting agendas and updates, while council members receive sufficient notice and background materials to prepare for the discussions that occur at the council meeting. Importantly, this section also ensures conformance with the Municipal Act, which requires municipalities to pass a bylaw that sets out the location and notice provisions for meetings. By clearly outlining where and how notice is given, including for special and committee meetings, the bylaw ensures that the town remains compliant with legislative requirements. It also includes the standards for live streaming and publishing recordings and procedures for proceeding in the case of a broadcast failure. So that was something that was absent in the current procedure bylaw. So this supports transparency and meeting continuity. And overall, this section strengthens accountability and promotes consistency in how meeting information is available to all stakeholders.
Questions? I just had one where, and I asked earlier, but it says 9.10 says where technology permits, all committee meetings shall be recorded and published on the town's website after the meeting has concluded. And I would ask if we need to include council meetings and committee meetings, because I didn't see anything else where council meetings would say they would be.
No, I just took that for granted.
Okay. Not seeing anything else. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I was trying to go back to the previous version, but it's 9.5. Agenda will be posted at the latest 5 p.m. on Friday. Was it always Friday and just the habit of staff to do it
But
Thursday?
it was Wednesday.
It's always been Friday, yes. And we have best practice of posting it on Thursday to give council more time with the agenda and materials. This gives us a little bit of wiggle room in the 48 hours. This is kind of our last opportunity for anybody who has late submissions to receive them in the clerk's department, and we'll allow them to be added to the agenda, and then we send out the update to council. So it gives us a little bit of wiggle room, but we will continue to try our hardest to get every single agenda out on the Thursday as early in that day as possible.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so, order of business. So this is a big one. I didn't go through all the sections, but I'm happy to go through each section within the order of business if council desires. But this section outlines the structure and sequence of the council meeting agenda, establishing the standard order of business to be followed at regular meetings. So it provides consistency in how meetings are conducted and ensures a predictable framework for decision-making and public participation. So in addition to prescribing the agenda order, the section sets out detailed procedural requirements and expectations for various components on the agenda, including declarations of pecuniary interest, delegations, minutes, public meetings, correspondence, notices of motion, and adjournment. These provisions ensure clarity in roles, timelines, and responsibility for both members of council and the public, and also for staff when we're communicating with members of the public. This section also supports compliance with the Municipal Act, which requires that the location and procedures for meetings be established by bylaw, and reinforces the principles that we discussed at the outset of this meeting of transparency, accountability, and orderly governance. So you will see under order of business section 10, there's about 16 different sections, 13, I can't recall off the top of my head. Quite a few where we go into, 12, where we go into the provisions for the more significant sections of the agenda. So you'll see a lot of yellow in section 10. We've added a lot of language around delegations, correspondence. We've changed the order of business to ensure that there's better flow for council meetings. So this was a common theme in the councillor interviews that we had, requesting that public meetings for Planning Act applications, as well as delegations and presentations, be moved to 6 p.m., which makes complete sense. Often we have individuals who are requesting delegation in response to an item of correspondence or to a special staff report. And so it didn't make sense to get to a special staff report and then have to delay consideration until after the delegation or presentation at 7 p.m. We've made considerable updates to the notice of motion section, and then bylaws as well. We are proposing considerable changes to how council receives and reviews bylaws, and have removed committee of the whole. But we can move through each section. It's up to council. It's a lot of information, but however you
I
want to
have a
proceed.
question.
Just go ahead.
So when it comes to the unfinished business, 10.1.5, how many times are we moving? Does it specify if it's just the one time we're moving an item to the next agenda, or can we move it multiple times based on the same reason?
So unfinished business would be used specifically for anything that council doesn't consider. So for example, that marathon meeting that we had a couple months ago, where council adjourned before getting to a lot of the items on the agenda, we didn't have a special placeholder on the agenda for them, but best practice in Robert's rules is that those move to unfinished business, so then council then considers them. So it would have to meet those requirements, where if council just doesn't have the time to get to an item, it would move to the unfinished business section. Now, that's different than if council wants to defer consideration to a certain time. We could also, that would be reflected, but it might be to a certain meeting, so it wouldn't necessarily be always to the unfinished business section. It just depends on council's direction at the meeting.
So the unfinished business section will always come up if there's a meeting that kind of didn't finish the agenda. It will always come up on the next meeting as an automatic, is what we're saying.
Correct. There just might not be items under that section of the bylaw if there was no unfinished business.
Okay.
Other questions about this section? It's a big one. So maybe, yeah, Councillor Van Kouten-Bosens.
I understand moving things to 6 o'clock. I'm just wondering if the public coming from work will have issues in trying to get here for 6 o'clock. I totally understand, and I hate it when we are listening to a special staff report and we're already listening to that and we haven't had a chance, and we know that there's a delegation coming up. I totally get that, but I'm just wondering, is 6 o'clock maybe a little too early? For us, we've all made arrangements to make sure that we're away from our workplace to be here for 6 o'clock. But is that, I don't know. I just want to pose that question.
So I'll play the devil's advocate on that one, and when we go back to that marathon meeting, some people didn't get heard till 11 o'clock. So I'm actually for not having a time whatsoever, and just having a place on the agenda, which is at the beginning. I've seen other, Council Swax does that. If we have it at the beginning, it's gonna be heard at one of the first things on there, but you're always going to have those times where people are too early or too late to be able to get to. I think having it at the beginning, it works well. We did this at the county. We moved everything up to beginning, especially if we're paying professionals to be here, or we're paying for, if we have staff, again, that are giving those, or trying to, like our planning staff and stuff like that. I think 6 o'clock is I'll be honest, at the county, we've had people show up at 9 o'clock during the week. I don't think it's a perfect time, but I think if people really want to participate, there's a way to do so. And they can always send in written comments as well.
And if I could just chime
I
in,
agree with that.
I think it's a good discussion to have, and I'm glad that it's been brought up, because it's always a thing. I think that's how we got to the 7 p.m. timeframe originally, was, ensuring. But there also are, and I think it's a good point about written submissions, but because we do have online and those participation things too, that is another method too now that individuals can, so that does expedite some things. So that's another, sometimes technology causes us pain, but sometimes there's advantages. So that might be an advantage that we could utilize.
Is there any further discussion on that one?
So if we were to say no time frame, though, then how would that happen if they weren't here when, like if they were at the first of the line, if they weren't here, then we would put them to the bottom and we'd go to the second person that was here? Or how would you frame that then if we were to take out time? I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm just trying to frame it in my head.
No, and that's the problem right now, is we have it at 7. But, so we have people show up at 7 for a delegation, and they may not get heard till 11. And so, to me, when you put a time frame on there, that gives an expectation of that's when it's gonna happen. Whereas it says, okay, if we put it at the beginning, our meeting starts at 6 o'clock, and we're gonna start these at the beginning, and the public meetings are gonna be like, they're not gonna be exactly 6 o'clock, because we have to do this other stuff first, but that's where they are in the agenda, is first at that meeting. Then there's expectation that you should show up at the beginning of the meeting. And then you'll get heard as soon as possible in the list of the agenda. It's impossible to say when exactly something, because when it comes to consideration of petitions, delegations, and presentations, it all depends how many public meetings are scheduled when that is. But if we say 6 p.m., it still may not be 6 p.m. And then some people, like I've almost done this. I wanted to go to other councils to watch something, and it's like, oh, someone said, oh, it'll probably be this time, and it was way earlier. I don't know. I would rather have people here early and be able to go than, we can stay late. That's the whole reason to move it up, is so we're not keeping people. I'd rather have people here early for 5 minutes than have people here late for 2 hours and waiting for them to be patient, and they've other plans for the evening. But,
No, I'm just gonna ask, like, are you separating public meetings for planning application and delegation? Like, doesn't the public planning meeting have to have a time anyway? And
it has to be on an agenda.
but it doesn't have to be posted at a specific time?
No, really,
Yeah.
the Planning Act will say, they'll say, this is when the public meeting is gonna be heard, but a lot of municipalities will say, it's gonna be heard at this meeting, which begins at 6 p.m.
Okay.
So that's quite often what they say. So that's.
So we don't have to advertise a specific time for the public's awareness.
Well,
We'll
right,
just say it's
So right now that happens, because if we have multiple planning meetings, all of them can't start at 7 PM.
That's right.
But we say all of them, like they're all 7 PM, but really they're at this meeting that starts, and we start public meetings at right now at 7 PM.
Really, that's what you're doing now. It's as though you're telling the people, the public, that your meeting starts at 7 PM, because that's when your planning items are heard, right? So it's exactly like that, right? So you could still publicize that and just say that our meeting started at 6 PM, but, it's that difficult.
Meeting actually starts at 6, so you want everybody to be aware of the meeting in totality, not just their delegation. So if that's something that we want, just to make sure people are aware in case we swap agendas, then we can definitely go with 6 o'clock, just to make sure if we did have a reason to switch something over, that someone is still there and present. I can see how that makes sense.
It certainly does make the meeting flow considerably better. It's a lot smoother for all of you as well, to have that there and dealt with at the top end. But, walking that fine line between being available for the public, that's your thing to think about.
Can I ask the clerks what we tell delegations, planners, everybody else?
Yes, we try to be as respectful of people's time as possible. So if there's only one public meeting, we can say, hey, it's right at 7. We'll base it off of the current procedure bylaw. If we have multiple public meetings and a number of delegations, we will say, if it's a delegation, there's a couple public meetings in front of you, err on the side of caution, but we likely won't be getting to your item until, say, 7:30. So, sometimes we've said 8 PM and we haven't got to them till 11 PM. But it's tricky because you try to gauge the amount of discussion and then against the number of individuals that may show up for a public meeting. So we try to work with everybody that's coming in, but it's not an exact science for sure.
And over the years, we've really leaned on pushing them to I've always told people to be cautious. If the public meetings are starting at 7, you better be here at 7, because there's a chance, we've had it before where a public meeting is up and gone within a matter of a couple minutes, right? So to tell someone to come, half hour later is a risk, right? So, and you don't want someone to miss out on that. So it's always a balance. And just to go further to the time of the meetings, like, I've been involved in committee meeting or council meetings for years. Some of them didn't start till 7 because of the public, and then they would do like closed sessions ahead of time so they could try to get things done, so they weren't here till late at night. But then the public would criticize the council because they're like, oh, you go in closed doors and you make all the decisions ahead of time, and then you come out and right. So that's not a clean way to go either. But like I say, I think it's good to have this discussion, but we do have a few more technological advantages now that we didn't have previously. If you want to bring, it certainly makes the meeting flow smoother, which is a little easier and there's nothing wrong with having your staff special reports be the later part of the agenda. Staff are going to be here anyway, and that's just fine.
Well, I'm glad I brought it up because it was a good discussion, but I say leave it at 6 o'clock because you're right, you brought up some really good points. So I thank you for that discussion.
Yeah. I like the 6 o'clock too.
Okay. One I wanted to bring up was switching the order from having disclosure of pecuniary interest before adoption of the agenda. And the reason for that is that until we adopt the agenda, if there's additions to it, there may be other things that come up. And so just have that, adopt the agenda, then everybody knows formally what it is, and then we can easily, everybody can decide if they need to declare or not, and not maybe miss that, less chance of missing it if something's changed, if we've already gone through that. But I sent that, discussed that with the clerks as well during the meeting, so. I don't know if anybody had a problem with that one, or? I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a good idea. Yeah, there was that. There's the public notice here. Nope, like that. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, I just wanted to say, Deputy Mayor, in response to your question about the time for public meetings, the public notices will still reflect a time, so they have to. So you will still see on the yellow signs or the public notices that are mailed out to those individuals within the application, the radius of the application, it will still have a meeting time. So it will now say 6 PM. It has to have a meeting time on there for the public. So you will still see that, even if it's not 6 PM on the agenda, that's what will be on those public notices. And then with respect to the timing, I will say, it hasn't happened very often, but there have been on occasion where we haven't had much on the agenda, and with public meetings or delegations, you get through the special staff report, and then you're kind of waiting until 7 PM. So this is also to help with efficiency, to ensure that it's a more streamlined meeting for everybody.
That's a good point. So that's kind of order of, is there anything else on the order of business? And then there's disclosure of pecuniary interests, which is in there. There's anything on that? Okay. There's the council consent agenda, which is it's a little bit different process. Is there any questions on that new process? I think that will help quite a bit on different items. Still have the ability to move stuff forward, but make it a little bit easier for printing agendas that way. Minutes, pretty clear on, the clerks are good on minutes, they're the ones who have to write them. Public meetings, we've talked about that. Delegations, anything on delegations? One question I had, which I forgot to bring up, was it says in 10.6.15 that clerks may edit or reject non-compliant materials and notify the delegation of required modifications. Do the clerks have any concerns around editing material, and may it cause issues with people? My concern is that people may say, okay, my stuff was edited and I didn't want it to be. What kind of edits would that be?
Very minor in nature, like a spelling mistake if it's going up. In terms of non-compliance, so we had a delegation recently where we went back to request a modification where the town branding had been used on the delegation's presentation, and so we exercised our authority and said, you can't have town branding on your delegation. It makes it appear as if this is coming from the town, and it's not. And they were great. They removed it. It was their first time presenting in front of council. So it kind of speaks to that, being able to look at something and identify kind of significant concerns.
Mm-hmm. I do think from a chair's perspective, a lot of these updates are really really good, because it's very hard to chair a meeting and keep a delegate on target if you don't know what they're going to talk about and present. And having that material ahead of time is important for everybody. I originally had a concern about around 6.4.6, which is bring signs and placards into council chambers or any other meeting location, or distributors, pamphlets, buttons, or other material during a meeting unless the material are expected and intended to support delegations and presentations, because I was worried about that, again, being just distributed without that going through the process. But I've read it a couple times, and I think that the word expected in there would dictate that would have to be pre-approved material that's made it through the process. And I just want to make sure that's everybody's interpretation, because what I don't want, we've had some before where people just try to give out information, and it's kind of bypassing that system that we've set up for that.
And what about making sure we all get the delegation documents before the meeting as a requirement as well?
That's where I believe this will make that happen, the changes, because they have to go through, they have to submit that information. Anything they want to have in front of council needs to go to the clerk's department by that deadline, so it can be looked at and make sure that it meets the requirements. And then it can be, make sure that's put on there. That's important, like, it's really, I don't think it's fair to council or efficiency for anything to have someone just show up and talk without being prepared, and at least providing what they want to talk about. And if they do have information, again, providing that ahead of time so we can be prepared to have that discussion with them. Otherwise, we're just going to have to waste time. But I think if that's the case, that the materials are expected and intended to support a delegation or presentation, to me, is the interpretation of council and the clerks that expected means they're ahead of time approved?
I can speak to this, and you had asked me this, and I've had more time to think about it too. And so what I thought about was, say, the most recent delegation from the students at St. Jude's who brought in their turtle sanctuary, and if they had a pamphlet that they had developed that they wanted to distribute to council, that would be something that supports it. We anticipate it. We knew that they were bringing certain materials in. But yeah, it is intended that we know what information is coming in, so that council isn't caught off guard, and that nothing's being distributed that wouldn't comply with the procedure bylaw and the expectations of engaging with council.
Sorry, can we have that, and just on there's a form a new form that people have to fill out, and that's just make that clear on there, that even if you want to hand anything out, it's got to be, yeah.
I think the wording that the clerk used there was good, is that it should be expected to support and bolster what you're proposing. What we really want to try to avoid there is somebody putting forth a delegation and saying, I'm going to come and talk to you about turtle crossings or something, and then coming in and saying, totally flipping the script and talking about something, out of our jurisdiction, or, inappropriate or something like that. So if we saw someone showing up with placards stating they were, supporting something completely different than what we would, it would immediately send off our guard, and so then we would go and talk to them about that and say that's outside of the procedure. So I think that word expected.
Michael, your mic is not on.
Sorry, it is on, I'm just not speaking quite enough close to it. So I think if the clerk could maybe add some wording to that to say what that means by expected, that would be beneficial. I think that wording you used there was very good.
So, anything else on delegations? I thank the clerks a lot, because that one it was needed. Presentations on 10.7.2. Again, I would just ask that language be added to suggest a 10-minute, to try to aim for 10 minutes as much as possible, or to be concise as possible in presentations. I know some things can't be, but just in the name of efficiency, fully expect council to be fully review all the information to come in beforehand. But sometimes, there's a lot of things like development charge studies and all that stuff.
Yeah, and development charge studies is a good example where there's a bunch of things that they have to cover off legislatively. So often the development charge consultants tell us, sorry, we're covering off as much time as we recognize that. But that's a very rare instance, but everyone else, we really will be enforcing that strict timeline unless there was something legally that, the other occasion would be, which we don't come across much here, but in a rural setting, you get it a fair bit with drainage reports. You bring in drainage engineer, there's a bunch of things that the drainage engineer has to cover off. Sometimes that can take longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah. Anything else on presentations, delegations, correspondence? Quite a few new things there, but again, just trying to make sure that that's clear on there. Notices of motions. Any questions on that one? It's a good clarification on notice of motions that when they are put up, it's not debated next. They'll just go up, and then we'll do it the next month. It's really what's. I totally agree with that. I think that it gives everybody have those time to fully understand and have the conversation, and and then we can prepare for it. But there's always that thing there, if we need to, there's a 2/3 vote, we can move that forward. So that's a good update. Closed session. In closed session. I have a question on, I want to put it to council on closed session. At the county, we restrict all electronic devices in closed session to just municipally supplied laptops and electronic devices. And then there is the provision that for those situations where, you know, you're expecting a call or anything, you can get it pre-approved by the warden or the CAO to bring something else in. The reason that was put in was to make, to limit the possibilities of electronic devices to be two-way communications, and if there was an incident, to be able to track what that went. If it's on a municipal computer or device, it's easier to do those items, but I didn't know if council felt about that.
It makes sense because you're trying to limit leaking information, right?
Yeah, there's always ways, but it's just more of a, if I bring in a recording device that's not, or my phone or whatever, and press record, it's very hard for IT or whatever, when we do an investigation, that's harder. If we have just our municipally supplied stuff, then we're able to limit that condition. But there is always those areas where people do need, you know, this emergency situation or something like that. But I can leave that out there for further discussion. Just, it doesn't have to be tonight. So.
I thought we already had that in here, to be honest. Like, if you asked me, I thought it was already in there, because we kind of do that, I thought. So I think that's a good.
So our current bylaw does not restrict
Yeah, I know. but
personal phones or
Glad it
anything
did.
from coming into the closed session. And so there's no limitations about potential two-way. That's just the as we get more and more devices, you know, we had a situation at the beginning when I think the first meeting after we passed the procedure bylaw at the county, all of a sudden we're in there and one of the counselors got a message on their phone and they were just, didn't even think. And so it was like, okay, that's a two-way communication outside of closed session, right? So just trying to limit and bring that to people's minds that okay, we're all provided with instruments from the municipality to be able to use, i.e. our laptops.
That's been the standard, right?
Our
That we
laptops, so
use.
we have the ability to use them. It's just how much do we want to limit as we go into closed session to try to limit the ability if something were to happen. And not our council, but future councils as well.
Question,
Yep.
hasn't it always been that we must use our official gadgets instead of our personal
There's nothing
during council meeting?
There's nothing in the procedure bylaw right now that would state that. I think the only person that really states is about the fire chief's phone. Doesn't have to be on silent.
Oh. But I think we've already established that as a norm, right?
Yeah, it would be a norm, but it wouldn't be, there's nothing in the procedure bylaw to be able to enforce that if there was an issue, or if someone chose to, bring something else in. There's nothing to say you can't, or someone can't, right? It's just, and it's one of those things of, you don't need any rules if everybody is in agreement, right? But it's one of those things where you get in a situation, and you look at other municipalities where there's been ombudsman's cases and stuff like that, where it's really hard to investigate things when you can't access files and stuff like that.
I think we should put it in the bylaw, just to protect the future of our, decorum at council when it comes to communication and two-way devices, because I don't see that as a problem for anyone. And I think if we have it in here as an updated bylaw for future reference, then we can now have a guiding principle that makes it easy instead of assuming. I will be for it.
So I'm going to say I'm a not for it, but I would like to know what other councils besides county council has within their bylaws. And I'm not necessarily saying that you would know that tonight, so again, if it's something that we could look into, I think that it's going to an extreme. I sit with usually 2 computers because I'm looking at the agenda on one screen and have the reports on another screen in that respect. I know I'm not the only one. Rick does, Councillor Eustace does the same thing in that respect. We all have cell phones. I have a business that I'm running. I get phone calls for alarms that come in on my cell phone. And just because I'm here at this meeting doesn't mean that I can't, I should be able to deal with my business alarm that's going off because I'm the first person to get that business alarm as well. Again, if it becomes rules of council, then I obviously would have to follow that rule. But I'm just asking if we could ask the clerk's department to check and see what other councils have within their procedural, besides county, in that respect, so.
No, and I'm fine with that as well. Again, there's those situations, but again, it can be just dictating use in closed session or something and along those lines of saying, because right now, if someone, I'll use myself as example. I can bring this cell phone in and I can be sitting there texting, and there's nothing in the procedure bylaw for someone to say. I can just say, well, I'm not texting about, I'm not distributing information. And I think just for ease of use and stuff like that, there's like I said, there is situations where, again, yes, if you're a first point of contact, I totally agree with that. That's something that you need to have access, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be using a phone during that time, right? So.
Right, but to be clear, if they were distributing something that was in closed session, they would be contrary to council code of conduct. So, you know, regardless, they would be breaking the rules, right, if they were doing that. So it's not that having the piece of equipment isn't, you know what I mean, isn't the only way to restrict them. It is also that they're not supposed to be doing that about the closed session.
Well, no, but it's just one of those
yeah.
things of it makes it very hard for, if I'm doing.
But
it
I
on a
think we're
personal
missing the
device.
point. We're looking at it as if it's a council meeting that we're talking about. We're only talking about closed session, right? And in closed
That's-
session, we could easily leave our gadgets on our desk and go into closed session and come back. And I don't think, I mean, in reference to what Christy is saying, like during meetings, I know she and Rick might have access to other devices, but they don't usually bring it into the closed session, which means we're already almost adhering to something like that. So I don't see the rule coming in place really affecting us that much.
Well, I think there does need to be, like I said, the county does have an appeal mechanism where it can be pre-approved, and that's fine. But I'm totally, if the clerks are willing to look and maybe see what's available to
Yep.
try to make
Yep.
again, it's a suggestion because of certain situations that
Yep.
I want everybody to feel comfortable to be able to, yeah.
Okay.
That's the only thing I had for,
Just a question for the clerk. Is that particular comment less or more detailed? Meaning, I have the motion. Do you want that in? Is that something that's specific enough that you'd like it in there, or are we covered?
I think you're covered because you haven't
thank you.
committed to including it in the procedure bylaw, so I think that's enough direction for us in this informal capacity that we'll take a look at kind of best practices and what other municipalities are doing. Sorry, I thought my mic was off. And we can bring that back, but if it were to be, if council is saying, yes, we definitely want this, then
Then
a
it
motion would be
becomes, yeah.
appreciated.
okay, so if there's no more closed items, then I would say bylaws, which is a change, but again, I certainly agree with the committee of the whole being gone because it serves no purpose. Besides, we get to go in and go out. So that will definitely save some time there. And then adjournment. And I did have a conversation I wanted to have with council on this one. Right now, it says it shall adjourn regular and special meetings at 11 p.m., and that's consistent with last time. I wanted to know if, how people felt with changing that to 10 p.m. with an extra hour, when we have the ability to go to, when we're just going to be doing 2 meetings, or the ability to do 2 meetings, we're trying to be more efficient with this. I don't think anybody's efficient when we hit 12 o'clock. And 4 hours, like 5 hours total to me is probably where somebody, like, I know my brain doesn't, like after 5 hours of staring at a screen and trying to make decisions, 11 p.m. is pretty late for everybody. I didn't know what people felt about changing that to 10 and then going with ability to 11.
I had that in my notes as well, that 11, I think 10 is even late for like, I'm not suggesting we shouldn't go till 10, but not only because that's a long meeting and you might not be as mindful, like you said, but also that's expecting the public to pay attention or stay up or be here in the council chambers until 10 or 11, which is probably not the most accessible way to engage them in what we're doing. So I'm hopeful that as we move to 2 meetings, we don't come anywhere near that very often, but I would say 10 is probably the absolute latest I would want to go once we flip to the 2 meeting scenario.
Would that be amendment you like, or would you like?
Oh, goodness, I asked for it, and I think that's fine. It's a pretty minor change, non-controversial. We can move that.
Does anybody have sorry?
Are we still leaving that we could pass the motion if we wanted to keep going for that last little bit to finish things off? So it would be 10 o'clock with passing 2/3 to stay for an extra hour then?
To continue the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm totally, because there's sometimes that you're almost at the end and finishing it off is so much better than deferring it to the next meeting and rehashing everything again. So I'm totally in agreement with 10. 11 o'clock is way past all of our bedtimes.
I agree.
Perfect. Anything, does anybody have anything else with the adjournment? I think we're on to committees.
Okay, so the committees section outlines the framework for establishment, composition, and operation of council-appointed committees, including standing advisory, statutory, and ad hoc bodies. So council will note, if I'm going to back up, there's a lot more clearly defined committee structures within the definitions section of the bylaw. Wanted to really clarify that, the role of these different committees, so that we have more clarity and understanding of the expectations of these committees as council appoints them. Committees play a key role in supporting the work of council by providing specialized advice, reviewing matters in greater detail, and facilitating public engagement. And so really thought we would bolster this section a little bit more. The provisions set out in this section ensure that committees are formed with clear mandates, operate transparently, and follow consistent procedures aligned with this bylaw and applicable legislation. The section clarifies expectations regarding membership, quorum, appointment process, reporting requirements, and the role of staff liaisons. This section also reinforces council's authority to establish, dissolve, or amend committees as needed to support its governance and decision-making functions.
Any questions on committees? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I know we're formal, informal. So until the BIA adopts their own terms of reference, what's in this committee section still applies to what
That is
they are
correct,
doing?
yes.
Yes, I don't see anything else.
Okay, so moving on to motions and voting. This section establishes the rules and expectations related to how council and committee decisions are proposed, discussed, and then finalized and formalized. It ensures all members have a clear, consistent framework for presenting motions, debating matters, and participating in the decision-making process. The provisions of this section define the types of motions that may be brought forward, the requirements for seconding, debating, amending, referring, or withdrawing motions, and the rules that apply to voting procedures, including tie votes when somebody abstains from voting, and then the mayor's role or the chair's role. It also outlines the use of points of order and privilege to safeguard fairness and uphold meeting decorum. and the limited process by which decisions may be reconsidered within the term of council. So I'll draw attention to this in a second, but by clearly articulating these procedures, the section supports orderly and transparent deliberations, ensures that council decisions reflect informed consent, and maintains legislative and procedural integrity. So going back to the reconsideration section, council didn't have really direction when we last spoke about this. So I looked at it, looked what a lot of other municipalities are doing, and we are proposing that anything within the term of council be open for reconsideration, which seemed to align with a lot of other municipalities. This isn't to say that after that term of council, something can't be revisited. It would just be by different means. But once council makes a decision, it is binding, so it can't just be wiped clear and we're starting fresh. There has to be some parameters there, but we have proposed within the term just to give council a little bit more flexibility, but open to discussion. Again, this is council's procedure bylaw, so it's really up to you.
Questions and comments on the motions and voting? The only one I have is, it's just a question, a technical question, is under 12.7.8, there shall be no reconsideration, closed session decisions. What's the reasoning behind that one?
Really, those are directions to staff. You're not, there's no real votes that happen in closed sessions. So it's really hard to reconsider direction to staff because that should then be coming to an open meeting of council or direction to legal.
We should have really completed that work, right? So if you tell us to go away, usually it's like, go away, research this, or offer this, or something like that. So it's hard to reconsider that if you've already done that.
I guess we can always change our direction to staff, so because it's not a formal motion, so we can okay. There's a different mechanism. Okay. So it was like, well, maybe there's no, okay, perfect. Any other discussion on that? Nope. Okay. I think you're good.
Okay. So moving on to electronic participation in meetings, the section of the procedure bylaw establishes clear guidelines for council members to participate electronically in meetings, ensuring inclusivity and flexibility while maintaining transparency and accountability. So the purpose of this section is to establish members, or just to enable members to engage fully in open, closed, and committee meetings remotely when necessary without compromising meeting integrity or quorum requirements. It outlines notification procedures, participation standards, and voting protocols for electronic attendees. Importantly, it also emphasizes that in-person attendance remains the preferred method of participation in a council meeting, reserving electronic participation for extenuating circumstances. The section also includes specific privacy safeguards for closed session participation to protect confidential information.
That one, I think this is a great update because we just didn't have this. Really, electronic participation wasn't a thing when the last procedure bylaw was brought in, right? So it really, in fact, you couldn't do it. It had COVID happen. Anything on that one?
So 13.1.3. And I'm going to go back to when we were in COVID times. I had my child with me at home, and I chose to turn my camera off because she would come over and be right there wanting to be seen on the screen. And I think that if we're having to be online because we're sick or we want to participate, but we're not feeling 100%, but we have children at home, this is saying you shall keep your cameras on. And I think that option needs to be there, especially for parents. I hate to say it, I'm there and I'm listening. However, it's not, I don't want it to be a distraction. I don't want it to be the distraction on the set here if I'm having to meet while I'm at home in that respect. So I think that we need to be taking that into consideration. And there are times that when you're voting, absolutely, you should be shown on the screen. So if there's a vote that's happening, then you should be, and you should be aware that I need to put myself onto the screen. But I think that there needs to be, it shouldn't be just that you shall have it on at all times. So I don't know if that is something that council would like to talk about.
I think I understand where that is coming from. I am thinking about a mom who is breastfeeding and is on council and has to participate, trying to breastfeed and be on council at the same time. Not that they are not focused, but they have that little privacy. So I think making it an option and making it like mandatory when it's time to vote so we can physically see is.
So I think that I can see both sides to this, so I'm going to state both sides to it, kind of. Well, we are elected to be on council and be full participation while we're here. If we can't fully participate, then if you're too sick to participate or there's other reasons, then yes, the electronic is there, but it's more to facilitate joining remotely rather than not having the scene. There's a thing about being able to see the person when you're talking, when you're debating, when people are listening, to be able to see reactions and stuff like that. I think that what I don't want to have is the option where someone can go, well, I just don't want to turn my camera on. If there's extenuating circumstances, then someone, to me, a council member can ask to say, okay, I want to be exempt from this because I can't physically turn my camera on all the time because I'm very ill. Or
I was just gonna say that.
So-
Having somebody.
yeah, and so there's one of those things there's always good reasons why things should not follow a rule or have to have an exemption to the rule. But I think that should be put to council to say, this is our general rule. This is why it's here for, is to make sure that I'm on another board and it is extremely difficult. We have a member that is refusing to, like, they say they're there. They don't participate, but their camera's off. And it's one of those things where, it's something we've recently added, so it gives the current chair some ability to deal with that. But it's one of those things where it's such
Yeah,
an
I see the
important human
difference.
function to be able to see what's happening and see the reactions of people if you can. And so if there is those cases, like you state that, okay, I'm just not physically able, but I do want to participate. I think members of council should understand that and go, okay, yeah, that's a good reason not to.
So do you want it to be that there is an ask to exempt someone from the general rule then?
Well, I
So
think it would
that-
just be an ask that the procedure bylaw be, that rule of this be suspended for that
That
time,
person.
right?
As long as there's flexibility, I think it's only fair and more inclusive, yeah.
I would say I was leaning more towards Councillor Van Kooten-Boston's. Like, if someone feels like participating electronically is the only way they can make it to the call, and for me, it was like the last budget meeting, and I was so sick and coughing and blowing my nose, so I turned my camera off between voting and listening and chimed in as I could. And I wouldn't want someone to think it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to ask for permission, and so I should just, not go, I'm not well enough to go. Like, I would wanna make it as easy as possible for someone to attend electronically if that's what they choose. But I think their camera on while voting and the camera on at all times during closed maybe would be like, I don't think your camera really should be off and closed. Like, it's supposed to be private. We should see that it, even a kid is not coming in at that time, kind of thing, for example. But I can see how, you could ask for permission to turn your camera on, but, I don't know, I think if your camera's on during voting, I don't know. I hear you that you've had an issue, and that is very frustrating. Like, I've been on meetings like that too, so I get the intent of what you're saying.
And it's just from a chairing position, it's really hard to, if you have multiple people on electronic meetings. Oh, I think we all remember COVID. That was a horrible thing online of just, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Councilor Van Kooten Boston.
So, and I'm echoing that, this council wouldn't have a problem in saying, not a problem. But what happens if you get a council that, and no offense, but there's 5 men and 1 or 2 women who say, you don't need to have your camera off, you can be on camera. And they could make it very difficult then by saying that it's shall. It's that word shall, you shall have it on at all times. I think that it's too harsh. I'm sorry. And I don't want to ask permission that, can I have my camera off? Like, I think that is being intrusive in that respect. Yes, I agree that we are asking people to be here, and that's always but I also, if a young mom got elected to council, I think that she should feel that she can have it off. And because I've been through it, and I remember what it was like, and it's not that anyone on council ever made me feel like I couldn't have my camera off, but I'm just thinking, why should I have to ask for that permission? We are trying to be more inclusive in that respect around this horseshoe, and I think that we need to keep that in mind as we're trying to set rules for future councils. And I'm not saying that anyone at this table would take advantage or disadvantage or anything like that. Please understand that. I get where you're coming from, but I just think that word shall is
I agree.
very definite and yeah, anyway.
I guess
Kinda
the only
like
other
right
thing I
now,
would say is that there's,
Sorry.
when we're
it's kinda like-
here, we don't get to shut our cameras off. And public, as a participating, also want to be able to see, what counselors are doing. Again, I'm willing to compromise and say, like, during voting and stuff like that, but there is those cases where we are public figures, and when we're in person, no matter how much time we would like to maybe shut our camera off during that time, we don't get that the ability to. And I think that if the meeting is trying to be here in person as much as possible, but so it's one of those things where I guess extenuating circumstances may make it possible to not have your camera on, but.
Well, if I may say something, I think the perception that someone is already electronically joining the meeting states that that person already has an inconvenience to being present at the physical meeting, which will make more than likely that people at home have an understanding that that person is doing their best already to be there. I don't really see it as something that the public will take offense to if it's not like the whole meeting that you're just not there. For example, I've been wanting to go to the bathroom for the last 5 minutes, and I have to put this camera off, and that would be something that I have to announce if I had to take permission for. So I think the more, like, I totally agree with Christy's point of view, where the more we think futuristically about not being just us, but others having to have that rule in there to allow for, supporting someone who's not already able to physically be there, whether they're sick or for other reasons. And I do think that the word shall can easily be may, and essentially that solves the problem. And I do have to take a minute.
So you bring a good point, though. If someone's camera's off, you can't tell if they're still there, if they've left the room, or anything like that. I guess, to me, it would be, I guess there would have to be that trust level that I would hope someone would put it on as much as possible. Just for those reasons, for the good reasons of being able to see somebody, and as well as being given the opportunity to say, you can have it off for the good reasons of having it off when you're ill and stuff like that. So I guess not an easy one, but again, it's up to council, and I'm open to, it's not, if you want to change from this, then that's something that there's going to have to be agreement on, right?
So can I ask the clerk's department, is this what was generally, because I know you scanned others, was this generally the shall, was that generally within other procedures as well?
Some, but not all. And I will say, to add a layer of complexity to this conversation, that your procedure bylaw still does allow for audio-only participation. So as a form of electronic participation. So then your camera isn't an option if you are participating by audio only, which sometimes that's the only option for some individuals who want to attend. And council can say, no, it has to be by camera if you want to attend electronically. But I just wanted to point that out, that is reflected in your procedure bylaw.
And the point about the washroom is kind of valid, because we are on camera the whole time, but if one of us needs to get up and go to the washroom, that camera doesn't come with us, right? Thankfully. So it is hard when they're there at home. I think some of the points are valid that I hadn't thought of, to be honest, and I don't know what the clerk thinks, but maybe there's some more that we could take away and think about that a little more.
And maybe if council wants to think about this too, we're gonna have another shot at this, like it's gonna
Yeah.
come back, and so we can amend things. This seems to be a point of debate,
Discussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
so it's one of
We're
those
having a
ones.
great discussion.
So I think that we can try to work on something in the,
And I think some of the points raised here have been fantastic. It's some things we haven't thought of, so that's good for us to wrap our head around. So
I will say too that I believe I wrote section 13.1.3, and then close to when the agenda was published and we were finalizing the procedure bylaw, the deputy clerk and I had a discussion about, okay, we don't put a time, or we don't cap the number of times a member can participate electronically, but we've also added in language where it really should be for extenuating circumstances that prevent a member from attending, whereas that language wasn't in there before. So going by that, and really there's not a lot of teeth to it, but going by that, you would think if someone's not at this meeting, then maybe they are very unwell or have circumstances that are preventing their in-person attendance. And so by that, maybe they wouldn't be able to have their camera on at all times. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But we can add some possible language and kind of look further into best practices that other municipalities are doing, and add that into the best practices for closed session and technology.
Not to be a pain in the butt, but what happens if we go back into a COVID time? Or if we had, there are some councils out there that have had threats put against them, and they've had to go into, oh, sorry, is that coming up? Okay, I'll shut up, thanks. Perfect, sorry.
so I think we've had good discussion on that. Everybody will have time to think about that one, and the clerks will have more time to provide some more input on it. So we will, if there's no more other questions, we'll go on to the next one.
So, Christy, great segue, or Councillor Van Kudenbossen's. This is just electronic.
I have a question, sorry, before we move. I thought I was muted, unmuted, sorry. Is there any place we have the limit of how many council meetings we can do electronically? Is there a prohibition on that one? Or have we not thought about that?
So the provision is no, there's not a number, but there is the 13.1.4, it says electronic participation meetings should be limited to extenuating circumstances. Wherever possible, members are expected to attend meetings in person.
Okay, I mean, I guess we can use that, but say someone came on and they decided they were always gonna be on electronically, how would we mitigate that? If their reasoning seems to us that it is, and I'm just wondering if that can be allowed perpetually because we have a reason. Something to think about.
Well, if it's, yeah, if it's something that, if that's not something council wants in there, then they would have to change that. It's not, like the clerk said, it's not something with a lot of teeth in it. It is a goal of council. Again, having that face-to-face interaction and to be able to be in front of the public who come for public meetings and such as that is, it's a method that's made so people can attend. But hopefully it's, it's something that's,
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where it's probably better to be, it's always better to be in person, I think, for the process, but there's no, I don't think it's a procedure by law. I don't think it's, it's one of the ones that can be enforced that way. Okay.
Okay, so the next section, which I failed to include in my presentation, so Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, I apologize, I pointed to electronic participation, but I was thinking in my head it was section 14, which is electronic meetings, which follows right after section 13. But the section talks about meetings that are strictly online. And so we needed to introduce something for those situations that you touched on, where due to health and safety, or if there's, the building is being renovated, or should there be another declared emergency, council is permitted to have a fully electronic meeting. And so this establishes some requirements. It talks about failure of technology or live streaming and what happens in that event. And how we will go about communicating with the public. It's not too detailed. It references other sections of the bylaw with respect to participation, but needed a section in there to address those situations. As you'll recall, during COVID, the Municipal Act was updated, and it was just simply for declared emergencies. And now there's greater flexibility for council to have those fully virtual meetings, but having the procedure bylaw reflect some rules around what those virtual meetings look like and what will happen if there is a break in the technology is really important, because then you're not meeting open meeting provisions. So that is section 14 in a nutshell.
And just as an example, the county council will be meeting electronically because there was a situation at the county building with a water pipe breaking, so it's just not available. So it's great flexibility now to have that better flexibility, because otherwise they would have had to find another place or something like that. Is there any questions on 14, electronic meetings? Okay, so that is down that, and then appendix.
So council, no, I skipped over Appendix A because you just went through that at the June regular meeting, so I didn't think it was necessary to bring that back up, since you just adopted that policy with respect to the discretionary second meeting. Appendix B speaks to the consent agenda, so staff are proposing some changes. The appendix formalizes the use of the consent agenda, a practice that council is already familiar with, but which until now has not been governed by a written policy. The consent agenda is published separate from the regular council meeting agenda, typically 2 weeks in advance, and is intended to consolidate routine, non-controversial, and informational items into a single vote, improving the efficiency of council meetings. The policy serves two main purposes. So to clearly define the types of items appropriate for inclusion on the consent agenda versus those that should appear on the regular agenda, specifically under correspondence and resolution. And then to provide a structured response to the increasing volume of correspondence, particularly the circulation of municipal resolutions being brought forward to council's attention, so from other municipalities. Eligible items for the consent agenda include committee meeting minutes, monthly departmental reports, financial summaries, and correspondence for information, items that really don't require council debate or direction. Council retains the ability to request that any item be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration, so that's not going away, but what we are proposing is that on a bi-weekly basis, we'll send out almost like a mini list or agenda of all of the resolutions that we've received to date. That would then be hyperlinked to the consent agenda. So they'll all still be there in case you didn't get time to look at that bi-weekly correspondence that we send out, but it's not going to be an itemized list. And then council can say, I would like this specific resolution severed and included either as a standalone item on the consent agenda or be severed and brought to the regular agenda for correspondence and resolution by council.
So on the consent agenda, there wasn't a change for the committee meetings. So if the committee minutes would just be part of the consent agenda, but if the committee wants to do something, that would come before correspondence and resolution?
That's correct. And that's been the
Kind of the practice.
practice that we have been adhering to, but it hasn't been formalized. And so we're really formalizing that so committees are aware too.
That's good. Anything further on the consent agenda policy? I like that's what we do with the count. The amount of those correspondence going out is a lot. So to include those all on an agenda like that would be, yeah.
Is there still the option for if someone had to take something out of the consent agenda, they would need to do that before you adopted the agenda?
That's correct. We would want to know any item that is to be severed from the consent agenda, and that's still an option that's available.
Before it's adopted, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay. Appendix C.
So Appendix C serves as a practical reference tool for council members to better understand and apply the various types of parliamentary motions used during meetings. Many of these motions are familiar in practice. This table consolidates key information in one place for council members as to how each motion may be used, whether it requires a seconder, if it's debatable or amendable, and then the type of vote that is required if that motion is duly moved and seconded, if seconded is the case. And then we've kind of grouped them into three main categories. I just had a lot of fun doing this, so I apologize. But it's really there to help council understand the different motions that come up fairly routinely and how they're applied, and then what is the requirement to get them moved in front of the committee or in front of the assembly.
I just want to say I love it. Thank you. I wish I'd had this 18 years ago. I might have understood everything going forward, but I think this is a crux. Like, for people to understand what they can and can't do at a council meeting, to me, this is it right here. And so I think that is a very, very worthwhile document for each and every council member to have. Thank you.
No, it's always good to have the resources right close at hand, because when you're in the moment, you're like, you can know it right before, and then right when you need it, that's when it leaves you. So that reference is always important. So absolutely. Any more questions on the Appendix C or comments? Okay. I have a larger item I want to get council's opinion on, because it goes to Councillor Van Kootenbossen's thoughts there and around. When I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, what if there was 7 new people coming in the room who've never attended a council meeting before? Reading through this, would you know what to do and how to get through a meeting? Because, you know, it's a possibility. Like, it's a probability, but it's a possibility, right? And that's really what this is about, is can we go through this and get a council meeting? So I think all the content's there, but I would propose moving things around on the table of contents a little bit. And I've talked to the clerks about this, but I think it's a big enough one where I think the council needs to buy into that one, others, and not just have it be my thing, right? So I do think that guiding principles and definitions and general provisions should be at the top. But I guess, okay, let me take you through a thought process here. I think everything that you need to know before you get in a council meeting needs to be at the beginning. So that would be your public notice, when the notice, the meetings, when they're placed, they're held, everything under meetings, everything under electronic participation at meetings, so you would know how to do that. Electronic meetings, and then the duties of the chair and the conduct at meetings. So before you get in a meeting, you know what's expected of everybody's role and what kind of, did we meet the notice requirements and all that stuff, and when to expect things. Then I would suggest we get into like the council meeting agenda. And then it was like, okay, so I'm trying to think, go back to your first day, and you're like, okay, well, how do we do this now? So we get into a council meeting agenda, and to do something, we ask for a motion, and then we debate it, and then we vote. So I would propose motions, everything to do with motions, then debate, and then voting, because that's what we follow. And then I would leave committees at the end, because that's something that's different from a council meeting. And I guess that's my, there's variations, but that was my thought process in what I would be proposing, is just get the information you need beforehand, then what happens in the council meeting, and then the flow through what we do. So hopefully someone could go in and say, okay, I've read this part, okay, I know what's expected of me, I'm now here, what do I do? Now what we do, and we get through those items. Because we're all getting experience here now, so we know, but all of a sudden it's like, it's an intimidating process if you've never been in a parliamentary situation before. And especially if you haven't been exposed to it. You can read every single one of these at different municipalities, they're different. It's all in the municipal act, but everybody's is a little bit different. So I didn't know how council would feel about that. I know it created a little bit more work relabeling the numbers and stuff like that, but
I think it
okay.
makes sense. It's like a dictionary, and it's like any contract, you give the terms at the beginning so that when you read the contract, you understand the contract better. So,
and when you got to the order of business, all those follow that, it follows that order of business, and that makes it easy to follow along.
So I just want to say I didn't even think about that, and I don't have a problem with it. Like, I get where you're going with it, but I didn't even think about that. About the table of contents and how you would read it in that respect. So kudos to you for thinking about that. I didn't think about that, and I just read through it all and thought, okay, yep, everything, go with it. But I don't have a problem with it. I'm sorry to the clerk's department. You make sure that you make him help you out. How's that sound? But
I was saying, it's okay, everything's formatted in the numbering, so if you move it, it just automatically repopulates, so it's, yeah.
You are so lucky, Mayor Petrie, because that could have costed you a whole lot more time.
I thought it was going to be, I was going to get some dust there. So.
No, I kudos to you for thinking about that, and I don't have a problem with it, so.
And this goes to, again, if we're trying to find information, it's in the way that we did it. Go ahead.
I would say I'm similar to Councillor Van Kootenbos, since I don't really have much of an opinion on what order it appears in. Like, you have to read it 980 times, no matter what order it's in,
Yeah.
no matter what. But I do need to make sure I have that order for the motion. So I don't know how if when at the end we take a 5-minute recess, or because I didn't write that all down in the order you had proposed. But if that order sounds like it makes more sense, so let's.
Give it to you.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Or you can have the chair and I can make a motion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have no problem reordering. Makes sense to me.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you for the engaging conversation. It's, from a clerk's perspective, very exciting, long overdue, but we're really excited to bring this to you. It's the cumulative effort of a lot of hard work and your participation and the public and a lot of the committees and staff. So we're just happy to be able to bring you something that hopefully will function really well for council for the next few years. And then we'll do our necessary updates and see what the province, brings us in the next few years as well.
Hopefully the next one will be easier. Like I said, this was a major, you guys put a lot of work in, because it is a major one. It's been one of those ones where there's so many COVID and everything else that's changed. There's a lot of, yeah. Any further questions? Yep.
So just to be clear, the only detail that's changed enough to need council direction is the reordering of the contents?
Yes, so I'm going to change the meeting, the adjournment time from 11 to 10 per councils. It looked like there was pretty good consensus on that. And then we'll bring back a report just on having your camera on while participating electronically. And then also for, I don't know where my note is, but I believe, for closed session and cell phones and technology and smart technology in closed session. So we'll bring something back on that.
So why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll think of this one more time, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up. So moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilson. All discussion, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. 5 minutes. I'm gonna go print this out. sure we're ready to go here, and then we will come back.
Okay.
Are we, got something in order?
Yes.
Perfect. Please proceed. Deputy Mayor Wilson?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Councillor Hudson. You're on my other one. That the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives staff report C-24-25 as information, and that Council direct the following changes be made to the bylaw. The contents be reorganized as attached, and that the amended bylaw be brought back to a subsequent regular meeting of Council for final review, and that the notice of intention to pass this bylaw be given following that meeting with final consideration for passage thereafter.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, and move to leave to go into committee whole on the following bylaws. Number 2.
Thank you. Through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, that the mover have leave to introduce and go into committee of the whole on the following bylaws. Number 1, bylaw 25-5397, June 23rd, special meeting, confirmation bylaw. Council in committee of the whole, Mayor Petrie in the chair. On motion, the bylaws are accepted as circulated.
Much discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We're now in the committee of whole. Would anybody like to discuss any of the bylaws?
Would this be like the second last time that we go into committee of the whole? I'm just saying, that's pretty special. Sorry. Well, it is a celebration. 18 years, it's always been committee of the whole, so we have maybe 2 more sessions then, right? Well, we'll go into committee of the whole. I think that's pretty special. Sorry. Just had to.
Okay. And number 3, to rise out of the committee of the whole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that that bylaws 25-5397 be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, and that this constitutes the third reading of the bylaw.
No, committee do now rise at committee of the whole. It's actually number 4. Sorry. Yep. Yep. No.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, that the committee do now rise out of committee of the whole.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens.
My apologies. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the bylaws 25-5397 be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, and that this constitutes the third reading of the bylaw.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I'll just do it on this one. No, that's fine. And motion to adjourn.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll adjourn the June 23rd, 25 special meeting of Council at 8:08 p.m.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we are adjourned. Thank you.